Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is episode 5 of Wayne's Music podcast. Before we start, I've got a couple of interesting upcoming community events I wanted to let you know about. Murray Creed is once again putting on his very popular yearly Victoria Drum Fest. This year, it's on Star Wars Day, May 4th. Be sure to put that on your calendar and check out online where and when to get tickets. Victoria Drum Fest, May 4th. And we'd like to thank Stefano's Art Farm, recording studio and band rehearsal rooms for sponsoring this podcast and for being such strong supporters of musicians and live music in Victoria. For your information, they're having their annual anniversary birthday party. This year it's their 6th party and it's on July 12th. Bands will be playing all day. And there'll be lots of fun activities for the whole family. Check out on their website, artfarm.ca, for further information. Now, let's begin episode number 5. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wayne's Music podcast. I've got a very interesting guest today, Glenn Parfitt. Glenn, when I was researching you, there was so much things you've done in your extremely interesting life, I got to say, that I wasn't stressed, but I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed at exactly how to approach this interview because there was so much, and we only have a limited amount of time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little bit of your bio, going to cover a lot of ground. After that, we'll sort of zero in on probably your Royal City Music website, because I think that's so fascinating. I think our listeners will really want to hear about that.
Well, thanks for having me, Wayne. I look forward to the results of this, and yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun, but yeah, tell me all about myself.
Yeah, I will. Okay. My guest today is Glenn Parfitt, a third-generation Victorian whose family contributed to the city's construction history, with many of the buildings still standing today. Glenn's early employment history involved jobs at the White Spot Restaurant, Goodwill Bottling, even a bricklayer's helper. In grade 8, he was inspired to enter the music business after witnessing a performance by the band Blues Union. Glenn began managing bands in 1977, and by the late 70s, he was producing shows and dances. He promoted and booked various acts, including Uncle Wiggily's Hot Shoes Blues Band, who continue to perform in some form to this day. They've gone under the name Big Hank and the Smokin' Hot Toasters, and different members change a little bit. Jack Lavin was in the band. I think he's not right now. Steve Cross, the guitar player, has been there for a long time. But the band is basically Hank Lionheart, the singer, is still singing and having similar bands. So they're still working today after all this time. Glenn also worked with bands through the Bruce Allen and Sam Feldman agency. After becoming disillusioned with management and promotion, Glenn transitioned into advertising, working at the Q radio station in Victoria. He later helped launch Hot 103 Radio, now Jack FM. And in 2003, he launched a website documenting the history of Victoria's music scene from the 50s to the 80s. The site eventually expanded to cover popular music across BC from the 1800s until the present, if I'm correct. It's known as a Royal City Music Project. It gets over 380,000 visitors per month and has over 83,000 pages of information. This is the area I would like to go over Glenn's life and concentrate on in the interview today. But before I talk to Glenn, I'd like to ask the viewers once again to click the like button on your computer screen and the subscribe button. That helps to show people are watching the program, and it helps me when I'm trying to get another guest for a future podcast. So thank you very much. So welcome, Glenn, and thanks for coming to the studio located in downtown Victoria in the House of Al. So tell us a little bit about the website. What exactly is on this website?
Well, what it is my whole premise of it was to capture sort of the history of popular music in Victoria. And when I originally started, it was supposed to be just rock and roll, 1950 to 1980. And of course, with the degree of success and interest that I had, and of course my family's music history, it ended up changing and moving sort of backwards and forwards. It went from 1950 to 1980, as I mentioned, and then it went from the 1800s to 1980, and then it went from the 1800s to 1999, which is actually where it stops. And one of our parts of our database is livevictoria.com that carries it from there. And it started with just being Victoria-based bands and musicians and venues, and grew to Vancouver Island, and then now it's currently province-wide.
Right, right. Okay, and you also list historical concert listings on there as well on the
Yes,
website.
some of the major events on the mainland and in Vancouver Island that have been done. There's anything like locally in Victoria. There's a listing for concerts and events that were held at Mount Doug Park,
Okay.
of which there were some fairly large ones. When you go to the homepage of the website, the first thing you'll see is one of those events, and just anything of any significance. And of course, like all parts of the website, it's always being added to and updated.
Right, right. Yeah, you've got event photos, poster archives in there,
Yep.
information on music venues over the years. Videos and audio recordings are on
Yep.
there as well.
As well. Yep.
So, any of you musicians out there, if you're not familiar with this website, please check it out. It's the Royal City Music Project, and you can get your band listed on there with a profile and everything. And with as many viewers that you're getting, they certainly all bands should be on this website. So, and if you're not a musician, it's still a fascinating website to check out. And it's also got an events calendar, so bands can put their gigs on there too. I understand.
Yeah, that's more the Live Victoria
Right.
portion of the database.
Right.
Live Victoria has all the listings for all the current events, and then we also have another part of it, which is Arts Victoria, which has music and all arts related events in Victoria as well. And we also have that database goes through to Vancouver. We have livevancouver.com, and actually our database stretches currently. We have cities, and part of it as far east as Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the website and its format, the back end of it, is the brainchild of Nev Gibson and Scott Lamming, and they were the two that originally put the site together in 2000 when they were both taking computer sciences at University of Victoria, and it's their situation grew, mine grew at the same time, and in about 2004, we decided to work together because we could serve each other's purpose.
Right, right. And Ross was he one of the original? Did he create it with you, or he came on?
Yeah, the two musicians who started with me were Ross Demude and Ken Sherwood. And I had, because I'm not a musician, I relied on them for a lot of information. Their main jobs for the website are to fact check everything that goes on. Ken in Victoria and Ross in Victoria and in Vancouver, both being part of the music scene during the 70s to almost to date, are able to go through it and see what, in fact, in the information that I find, whether it's factful or whether there's some parts that should be omitted or whether there's other additions to it. generally just helping with the content and making sure that it's as accurate as possible given the subject of the information, because there's
Yeah.
varying memories of people's past. You have one guy's memory, you have another guy's memory,
True.
and then you have the truth, of course. So,
Yeah.
but we try to get it as close as possible, and we try to reference the people that mention the information online, so that they can sort of own what's been put on there,
Right.
and it can be updated at any time
Yeah.
to reflect more accurate information.
Yes. Yes. You answered a question already. Then that's coming up because I was wondering how you did the fact checking and things like that. And Ross, that you're talking about, he's a marvelous guitar player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent guitar player.
Yeah.
He started off in Victoria as a roadie for a local band called Holy Smoke.
Oh, okay.
Ended up at one point playing part time with the band Holy Smoke, and then went to Vancouver and played with a variety of bands. Broken Hearts, so you're familiar
Broken
with,
Hearts was
Handley Page
yeah.
Group.
Oh, with them too.
And then he eventually moved to Alberta and helped discover a band called Wide Mouth Mason. Was
Oh.
even the representative at one point, and was the producer of their first album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the band Broken Hearts that you referred to that Ross was in was one of my favorite bands back in the day. And Rick Livingston, the lead singer, ended up down in the States performing with Skunk Baxter from Steely Dan. And John Dryden, the bass player, was in Trooper after a while. And the drummer, I don't know what happened to him. I'd never really
I'm
heard.
not too sure about the other fellas, but
Yeah.
those three primarily were ones that carried on
Yes.
into the
Yeah.
industry and had done very well for themselves. And they're still active today, but of course not as active as they used to be.
No.
Rick was also involved with a lot of music scores, and
Right. I heard
he
that.
also toured with a band called The Best, which featured Skunk Baxter, Joe Walsh, John Entwistle,
Yeah.
and Keith Emerson, and others. So he's
Wow.
had quite a career. He's an awesome person and incredible talent.
Yeah. Fantastic singer.
Yep.
Just a great voice. One thing I should mention about the website too, there is an area where you can donate, which helps to maintain the website too. Because as you can hear by what we're talking about, and if you go to the website, you'll see how massive it is. So there's a lot of maintenance ongoing that a donation here and there would be much appreciated, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, you've worn many hats in the music business, Glenn: manager, agent, promoter, and more. Which role was the most fulfilling for you and why
Well, and it still is today, and that's as a promoter.
as a promoter?
And it started off with me, of course, at the time that I began in the music industry. Disco was very prevalent, so live
Oh,
music was on the down
oh, okay.
in the late 70s. And there was fewer and fewer clubs to play because they'd all gone to, a canned music format. So, in typical family fashion, if you need something and you can't get it, you build it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I would go to Red Halls, get the liquor permits, book the bands, do all the promotion. Of course, in those days, in the 70s, traditional media. So we didn't have websites, we didn't have social media, and started filling halls with all these bands and dances. And I sort of took a big leap in July 1st of 1979 when I took over the Oak Bay Recreation Center. I believe it was the curling rink at the time, and it was 1,000-seat venue.
Right.
It was, of course, a holiday, which is in the promotion business is a taboo. And fortunately for me, it rained that day,
Oh,
and I had a battle of the bands that I put on with 6 local bands. Many of the players have already gone on to music careers in their own right. People like Dave Reimer, people like Colin Weeb,
oh, okay.
and so many others. This was in their earliest days in Victoria, and I sold it out, and it was 1,000 seats.
Wow.
So at that time, I'm a 23-year-old that's selling out 1,000-seat venues, and
Unheard of. Yeah.
anytime I put on an event, if I don't sell it out, it's a full house.
Wow.
And my last birthday, when I turned 70, I actually had to scale it back for my birthday celebration. So I kept it to family and really close friends. and there was only 70 people in a small banquet room in a hotel, and that was just about the speed that I'm at these days as far as that sort of thing. But I always appreciated the people's support, and when they came in, and the fact that a full room made me happy.
Yeah.
Some of the owners of the clubs and venues weren't very happy because I would go over the fire limit, over the
Oh,
legal limit. But fortunately, a lot of the patrons are spent half the time outside smoking. So at any time when the police or liquor
they
inspectors would
they
come
do
in
a
the
head
room,
count. It's
they
okay.
would do a head count and it would just make it under the wire. So,
Yeah, right.
but it's to have a full house full of people, getting them all in one venue, getting them enjoying music, and being a supportive crowd is just such a high for me,
Right.
and it's what motivates me.
Yeah, yeah. And you've had an outstanding career doing that. So huge success. I mean, right from the get go by the sounds of it. So what inspired you to start the Royal City Music Project? I mean, that's a huge undertaking.
Well, when I started off originally in '77, of course, I was with young musicians and doing a lot of things, and it wasn't in the realm of established musicians. Fellows that have been around the business since the '50s and the '60s. And as I sort of grew, I had these more mature musicians who would tell me stories and tell me about, oh, you don't know what it was like in the good old days. It was
Yeah.
this, and this. And I thought, these are great stories. Someone has got to write these down.
Right. Yeah.
So initially, I started writing all these down. I sat down in July of 2002 at a kitchen table in Machosen with Ross DeMute, and
Okay.
we started writing down bands and memories and
Right.
things that we felt were important to the sort of the beginnings of rock and roll music in Victoria, and then its progression through popular music up to 1980 at that point, and of course it grew. But then that's when it got to the point where we were going along nicely, and then the internet came and became involved, and that's when we put up the website, the first one in
Right.
2003,
Yeah.
February 2003.
Yeah. So, some of these things, the stories and things, I'm sure they're things that shouldn't be forgotten. The music history is very, very important for sure.
Exactly.
What challenges did you face when you were starting the archive, and how did you overcome them?
Well, first of all, being coming from a background as a promoter, a booking agent, and a radio salesman didn't give me a whole lot of initially credit. As far as I know a couple of musicians when I told them, "Hey, I've got this great idea, I want to do this," and they couldn't get away from me fast enough because they were wondering, "Okay, what shoe's going to drop? When's it going to cost me money? Or
Yeah, all right. Right.
there's got to be a scam or something." So, but as I kept going on it forward and didn't have my hand out to people, they realized that there was a genuine my love of music and wanting to capture the history of music,
Right.
initially in Victoria and on the West Coast. So that was tough, but then I started getting all these submissions put in. So I would rely initially on the musicians themselves, but fact checking was kind of difficult. And I have relationships with Royal BC Museum, City of Victoria, archives, and I have a fantastic relationship
With the
with
university.
University of Victoria Archives,
Yeah.
which holds all my personal collection of all the music memorabilia and a lot of the work that I did through the process up to 2019. And I still make donations to the University of Victoria Archive. So all those places for be able to source out information, um, to Google information. Obviously, I do social media,
Yeah.
and as I mentioned earlier, if I have information that's posted, and if it's not right, and somebody calls me on it, I can change it immediately.
Right. Right.
It's in real time,
Yeah.
so I can do it within a short period of time. My goal is always to keep it as accurate as possible, but given the industry, given what things happen along the way, it's not always to capture the total truth, but I get as close to as I possibly can.
Right. Right. Sometimes the truth it can be a little evasive, I guess.
Well, I
Like
had
you
to
say,
I
like
had to do a lot of editing, Wayne,
yeah.
especially when it came to backstage pictures and that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
green rooms and that sort of thing. And I did a lot of editing of coffee tables and other such areas.
Yeah.
I wanted this to be a positive creation, so that everybody would look at the music industry in a positive light.
Yeah.
And a lot of the taboo stuff that you talk about, I don't really have a place for it.
Yeah.
It's not what it's meant to be. I Musicians do something that I couldn't do. They could play music. I failed, and I've always felt that they deserve the respect that a lot of them didn't get. And in a lot of my work and what I do and my thinking is that I really do try to put them on a pedestal and recognize what they can do creatively.
Yeah. Good for you. Really, that's great. Now, my next question you've pretty much answered, because I was going to ask, how do you decide which bands, venues, or individuals to include in the archives? But people can go on and log in and put the information there themselves, right?
Sure, they can
Yeah.
they can get request or put the information in, and they can request to have access to it,
Mm.
and they can update it themselves. But as far as deciding what, who, where, and when, earlier on in the process, I started with rock and roll. Then it became popular music. And then I added blues, and then I added country,
Oh, okay.
and I added DJs, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, it's all or nothing. So
Yeah, right.
everybody in the pool,
Yeah.
and basically set it up so that there is no restrictions. There's punk rock bands, metal bands. There's just a myriad of things, but it's supposed to be a cross section of the art of music in
Right.
all genres.
Right. Right. You shouldn't exclude anybody if it's
No,
music.
no,
It does. Music's something that it's not good or bad, really. It's whether you like it or not.
it's a
So
personal taste.
it's a personal taste thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has the project grown over the 20 plus years that you've been doing it? And any milestones stand out?
I think the project over the years, putting the it all online was important. For a period of time during the 2000s, I decided to open up a Hall of Fame, and in collaboration with a local venue, Darcy's Pub, which is down on War Street below where
Harpo's used to be.
Harpo's used to
Yeah.
be.
Mhm.
We had all sorts of displays set up and memorabilia that people come in and they could be able to see all this. Unfortunately, the business model for that didn't really work,
Oh,
and it lasted for quite a while. But then eventually, ownership changed, direction changed, and the Hall of Fame itself was wonderful because I had the musicians decide who should be physically in the Hall of Fame, and every year I would have a group of musicians that would be entered into the Hall of Fame. We'd have a celebration, usually in the basement of the Strathcona Hotel,
oh, okay.
and again full houses, and we would highlight the people's careers. We had a lot of support. People like Red Robinson even came over and did some MC work and introducing some bands at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and really sort of got the ball rolling. But again, the model on that just couldn't sort of support itself, so
Yeah.
that got put on the back burners. But all the information that was gleaned is still on the website.
Right. Right. And Red Robinson was a huge supporter of live music for years and years.
Unbelievable. I even have commercials of his on the website promoting bands in the 60s up at the Ladysmith Agricultural Hall,
Wow.
which still stands to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was sad to see his passing not
Very
too long
sad.
ago.
He
Yeah.
was a huge supporter and a huge resource for me when, and I keep saying me, but it's the other crew as well when we were putting all this together at the beginning.
Right.
And it was great to have him.
Yeah. I met him one time. He came over to Victoria, and when I was working at Long and McQuaid, we used to do, and I'm sure they still do, a lot of workshops and stuff like that. And I got wind of one that somebody approached me and said, Red would like to come over and do a workshop with you because he's heard about them, but he doesn't want to play any instruments or anything. He just wants to tell stories about music, his life, and the people he's met. And I went, wow, that'd be fantastic. Because I've been a fan since I was a small kid, listening. When I first got into music, he was a DJ on CFun 1410, I think was the dial. And I'd be listening with my little transistor radio. So I was a huge fan of his, and I couldn't wait for him to come over. And he had slides of pictures and told some just wonderful stories.
He had fabulous stories, and
And
of course the books that he wrote
yes,
as
I've
well
got
outline a lot of it as well too. But
yeah,
he left a real legacy for all of us
yeah,
to be able to remember and buy and enjoy.
for sure, yeah. And him and I chatted a little bit in between the setup when we were setting things up, and he was just super charming guy, super nice guy.
He actually originally, when he was on air in Vancouver, he would come over, get off air on Friday after the morning show, jump on a ferry and come over here because he was dating a girl on the island.
Oh,
And he
right.
spent a lot of his time on the island on the weekends
Yeah.
and then caught the ferries back to go back and do a show.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere he was born maybe up in Courtney or something like that.
Not sure where he was born,
Yeah.
but
Not sure about that.
he
But
did spend a lot of time here.
yeah. Another question I've got is what role does the community play in contributing to the archives? But we've covered that. They can just go right on and
Yeah. And a lot of people will contact me. I get information from everywhere. Recently, I got an email sent to me. My husband was in a band. There's only so many people listed. Can you? Here's the rest of the list of the band.
oh,
Here's some
fantastic.
pictures.
Great.
So I was able to post that.
Yeah.
I got another one that showed up called My Dad Was in a Band. I've got pictures, but I don't know who's who in the band. So I got sent the pictures. I was able to research it, find out most of the members that were in the
Fantastic.
band.
Yeah.
Um, here's the best story. I get an email from a lady going, I have some tapes of some groups that are listed on your website. They're cassettes. Would you like them?
Sure.
And I said, sure, absolutely. And she goes, well, I'm a student. I live up in Seashelt, but I do visit the island from time to time. I said, well, would you like to send them Canada Post? And she said, well, I would, but I don't have a lot of money. And I said, I will send you the postage fee and packaging and anything that you need.
Right.
So I get this box. It shows up from Seashell. I open it up and it stings.
Oh,
Like
no.
it smells really bad. And I go,
Oh.
what the heck is this? So I open it up as a letter. Here's the ones I found. Thank you very much for taking it on. And it's a variety of different bands. Sunnybrook Farm, a band by Len Siemens,
Oh, okay.
and a bunch of personal ones by Daniel Richard, and a few others, right? And I said, this is fantastic. So I told her I got it, sent her the email back, and said, "Are you a relative or were you in charge of the estate of Daniel Richard? Because I knew that he'd had passed."
Right.
So she said no. She said, I said, well, where did you find the tapes? She goes, well, I was out at the dump up
Oh,
in
no.
Seashelt
Oh.
dropping off a bunch of stuff, and I looked over and I saw this box of tapes.
Oh,
And I
no.
thought, well, I'm a music fan. I thought there might be some jazz in there. I got the tapes. I brought it home. I went online. I researched the names of the bands that were on there. That's how I found your website.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
that's how we got the tapes. So that's just
Fantastic.
it just
Yeah.
comes from all directions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
of all places.
I didn't see that one coming.
No,
when
neither
you...
did I.
That's absolutely fantastic. So another one here we've talked about too, about how do you verify the information and the Ross and some people, they go through it and
Yeah. And then we also,
scrutinize.
if we're not sure, I mean, we've got access to, as I mentioned, the archives here locally previously, but all the newspapers now are putting all their information online all through the province.
Right,
So you can
right.
go to a place
Yeah.
like Vernon, you can type in the year, you can find articles and information about the band.
Yeah.
Band
Band members' names and stuff like
names
that.
and instrumentation, and that's been a really good source. Although having said that, I've also been taught that back in the day, a lot of these writers meant well, but they didn't have a lot of very good spelling skills.
Oh.
So I don't always get it exactly right. Like it sounds the way it should sound, but quite often I have to go back in when I find out the person's real spelling of their name and then change it back, which is very easy to do now. Yeah.
They didn't have spell check back then.
No, they didn't. But the thought that they had pictures,
Yeah.
they had some information. I could get a copy of the article posted along with the band's profile on the website. Have an
Absolutely.
idea, for the most part, accurately who was in the band,
Yeah.
what years they were together.
Yeah.
I have a reverse calendar that I use, and if I know the decade approximately that the picture was taken or the poster was made, I can go to my reverse calendar and I can tell you what year it was, because a lot of that information doesn't have the dates on it as far as the year.
You're right.
If you go through old posters, most of them do not.
Yeah, they don't
put
have
the
the
year.
year. I've noticed
No,
that actually.
but I
Yeah.
found a way,
Yeah.
and I'm able to identify within, I'd say, about over 90% accuracy the actual year that the events happened.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet's certainly helpful in that area. It's one of the good things about the internet. There's a lot of bad things about the internet, but we won't go into that.
Nope.
Can you share a story about a forgotten or overlooked artist or band whose history was rediscovered through this project?
Well, interesting. I had one fella who, and I mentioned him earlier, Len Siemens, who was a local guitar player.
Yeah, he's
And
still. I don't
was
know.
doing some research,
Yeah.
and I ran into an interview with Bill Henderson from Chilliwack and his drummer Ross Turney, and they talked about Lenny when he used to come into the clubs in Vancouver. And Len was one of the earliest pioneers of feedback in the West Coast as far as guitars, but he also would also play very loud.
Yeah.
So what they would do when he played places like the Smiling Buddha and others in downtown Vancouver, and it got to the point where they had to take his amplifier and they would turn it face down onto the stage and then eke it off the end of the stage so they could come with a level that was tolerable for everybody, but yet Len could still do his guitar gymnastics, as it were.
Right.
We found, and they also remembered being in the clubs when Len was doing this, and they remember sitting in the back of the room was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, wow.
And Hendrix would come down when he was staying at his grandmother's place.
Who lived in Vancouver back
when he
in the
lived in
day.
Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right.
And he would come down and sit in the back of the clubs. And Lenny was one of the guys that he studied as far as working on his guitar playing, his sound, that sort of thing. So Len gets credit for that. And another quick story I'll give you.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman, he was a lead singer in a band. His name was Rudy Tompkins, originally from the East Coast. Grew up there, big fan of music. He was in bands, he sang, he was a DJ, everything. And through his life, he had actually worked his way across the continent, city to city. He'd move there for a while, live, have a band, do the thing. And then he would also have a relationship with a woman. And he got back all the way out to Victoria, and he passed away, unfortunately. And all of a sudden, I get a note sent to me from this fellow looking for information on his dad, Rudy Tompkins. And I said, oh, okay, well, his stuff's on the website, because they found his name on the website. So I told him as much as I knew about it. I had a relationship with Rudy. And then another one came in, but it's from a different person from another city.
Oh.
And then I had another one come in, another person from another different city.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, all these relationships across, or not all of them, but a good chunk of them, he had a relationship, and the woman had got pregnant and had a baby by him.
Oh.
But they didn't know each other. They never met each other. They didn't know who each other were.
Oh.
And the common thing was they knew his dad's name. So I put them all together through the website, and they actually had a celebration of life for him, and there was 8 kids.
Holy smokes.
And they never met their dad. But through the website, they were able to meet each other and have this celebration of life and find out more information about their family.
Wow. What an amazing story. Holy smokes. That's really, really interesting. So are there any iconic venues or figures that you feel are underappreciated in the West Coast music history?
Well, I got to be general on this. All of them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I did it, because all of them I felt, even the ones that were well, I mean, obviously, David Foster is a fantastic musician, has had a fantastic career, but his whole history and everything else is pretty much well covered, although I do have the information on him and his first bands and the first people he played with. But, I always felt that they were underappreciated, underrespected, and I put them all on a pedestal, like I said, because they just do something that nobody else can do, and they're always not given the proper respect that they deserve. I know in your case, when you were trying to, you were involved with music and you were trying to open up a retail store, and you told them it was a music store, and your initial response to the person that owned the building was, "Oh no, not music! No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
music bad, music bad."
That's
And
right.
after, of course, they did the homework, they found out that of course, you were represented Long and McQuaid and were a
And
very credible operation.
yeah, then the story changed. But
But
before
yeah,
that, yeah, it was
exactly.
like, oh,
But the whole
yeah,
industry is like that. They don't get
yeah,
credit for what they do. Now, some of them deserve some of the stories that they did, but not all of them do. And a lot of them work very, very hard
yeah.
um, to play as well as they do, and to be able to, present it, please audiences, and entertain. And that was sort of my thing. If I'm going to mention somebody, it would probably be two of them. B.J. Cook, which was David Foster's first wife,
Right.
who is just unbelievable gal, has quite a history. Victoria, Vancouver, and if you ever get a chance to look her up and her information, she has just lived an unbelievable life
Mm,
and has so many stories and so many great things. But a lot of people didn't know who she is or still don't know who she is until you look up her information.
right.
Another one that was in the group with them, Doug Edwards.
Oh, I knew Doug
Yeah, and
Edwards.
Doug was fantastic musician,
Yeah,
producer, songwriter.
yeah,
Doug could do it all. Started in Victoria, went over to Vancouver, made a huge name for himself. Sadly, a few years back, he passed away.
yeah.
But if you look him up on the website, you can see about this much information on everything that he did and all the credits
Oh,
that he
yeah,
has.
yeah. I knew him quite well,
Yeah,
and I was saddened when he passed away. But he
yeah,
played with Chilliwack for a
yep,
while.
yep.
He wrote a song in the early days, so Wild Wildwood Flower or something like.
Wildflower.
Oh,
That was
Wildflower,
with
right?
Skylark, and that was with
Yeah,
B.J. Cook and
yeah,
with David Foster,
yeah.
and
And that did very, very well. Yeah,
exactly. And they
yeah.
recently were inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, and they were also on the Vancouver Walk of Fame this last year.
Oh,
They
fantastic.
got a star on the Walk of Fame, and rightfully so, but long overdue.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't know about who Doug was, but again, he's one of those. If you look it up on the website, your jaw will drop just
yeah.
how influential
He
he was
was.
in the
Yeah,
West Coast music scene.
I agree. And again, a super nice guy. Like,
Great guy.
just hard to meet a nicer
Yeah,
guy. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, with the archives receiving 380,000 monthly visitors,
Mm-hmm.
what feedback and stories are you hearing from your users? You just mentioned some when the family got together and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
a lot of them are happy that they get to see family members.
Right?
When some of them are like grandchildren or nieces and nephews of people that have passed, so they can see what they look like in a band.
Yeah.
For one that have parents that are on the website that are still alive, they can see what their parents look like with hair, and in a younger setting. For the fanatics of musical gear, for people
Yeah.
who like old guitars, old amps, that sort of thing. Well, it's a
Yeah.
treasure trove of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because there's so many promo pictures of them and also live shots of them with playing through the equipment.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's that. But
Yeah.
it's just a great place for people to go
Sure is.
and
Yeah.
evoke memories if their family or members of the family or themselves were involved in music at any point in their life.
Yeah.
And then also, like I say, a great resource for those that are not in music but can find out just about their family history.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I think it's just a wonderful website. I can't say enough about it. So, looking back at your career and your journey with the Royal City Music Project, what are you most proud of?
I guess what probably I'm just proud of the fact that it's been so well accepted. It
Hmm.
continues to grow. Um, Originally, when I started the website, I used the acronym for a Royal City Music Project, which is RCMP.
Hmm.
And it was sort of a tongue in cheek thing originally.
Sure.
And of course, in those days, there was an underground cult as well, too, that was anti establishment police.
Yeah.
And when I first booked the or put it online, and I got the URL rcmpsite.com, and everybody said, "Oh, you're gonna get yourself in trouble."
Right.
And as it turns out, there's a lot of ex-policemen, RCMP people, security guys that are on the website that are also musicians.
Yeah. Right.
See,
Sure.
even some undercover guys.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's quite funny. But it was interesting because no one came after me. Nobody, you know,
Oh.
said, "Oh, you can't do that." But I also didn't berate the police. When I was on there, there wasn't,
Yeah.
pictures of or cartoons of beavers in a Mountie outfit smoking doobies or something
Yeah. Right.
stupid
Right.
like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
It was just not where it went meant to be. It was always put on that pedestal,
Yeah.
and eventually it grew to the point where donations started coming in, but they were making them out to the RCMP site. Well, you couldn't get a bank account for checks and stuff like that, so I shortened it and registered. The URL rcmusicproject.com
Oh, okay.
and make donations and checks available to that name,
Right.
and have the bank account and the proper business registration. And yeah, it probably is just it, so many people have embraced this and so many
Hmm.
people appreciate it. And I get stopped anytime I'm in a crowd and people just shake my hand and thank me for
Yeah.
what's been done. And it's as much the people that have been beside me, Ken and Neville and Ross, as in myself, but I'm sort of the front of all of it because
Kind of the
I have
face
the
of it.
loudest voice and
Yeah.
the
Right.
biggest
And the biggest
presence
guy.
persona. But it's nice to see that they appreciate it. And
Yeah.
when I've done some events doing fundraising for the website, I've asked bands if they would come and play, and they wouldn't take my money.
Yeah. Is that right?
They said,
Yeah.
no, we won't, because of what you've done and how you've supported us and supported music and everything else.
Yeah.
We feel that we would like to
To give
contribute by
back.
paying
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Right. Hmm.
And the amount of people that just continue to donate to the site, and that funds, to keep it working. But it also helps me be able to give away honorariums.
Mm.
There was a band from the late 60s, early 70s called As Sheriff, and a local record company had found their master tapes, remastered it, released the vinyl, and we supported and basically put on a album release party.
Okay.
Mixing new media and traditional media, room full of people, media people, cocktail hour, played the album from front to back,
Wow.
and money goes towards that. We
Great.
have people putting on Battle of the Bands, but there's no money involved, right, for the winner, and that's a pet peeve of mine. So I would go, okay, we'll give an honorarium for a cash prize as well as this value added. And if I ever see anyone put on an event like that, a Battle of the Bands, and offering as a prize like 2-for-1 coupon or something,
Yeah. Right.
I get real angry.
Yeah.
Also supporting music in schools,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Just a variety of initiatives that help support music in its early area, all the way up to the things that are going on today. And I have a real affinity for young musicians.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you should be very, very proud of the project. It's really marvelous. I can't say enough. Like I said before, what's the next for the Royal City Music Project? Any new features or initiatives coming up?
Well, we've got some celebrations coming up. Of course, as I said, this year's the 22nd year, and we're just putting the finishing touches on a sort of a celebration of the 22nd year of the website. This July is the 23rd year that we've been doing it. So we started off in 2002, and then by 2003 we had the first website.
Right.
We are now on our fifth edition of the website since I started doing this, because as technology upgrades, we've been
Sure.
upgrading the site,
Yeah.
and we're already sort of doing the basis and the groundwork for when it comes out in let's see what's going to be there now. So that would be 2005. I think it's about 2007. It'll be the 25th anniversary of the 2008. No, 25th anniversary of the project in 2027. So we're all already working towards having a new format, new website, more
Right.
features,
Right.
and more interactive setup. But it takes as this thing gets bigger, it takes more and more to
Yeah.
set up the groundwork for it, and just generally more activity in the community and more giving back and more supporting
Right.
any sort of a musical initiatives in the Greater Victoria and Vancouver area, for that matter.
Right. Right. Well, we're just about finished, Glenn. I got one more question. What do you hope the legacy of the Royal City Music Project will be for future generations of music enthusiasts?
Well, that it is a resource for people who are trying to find out music history, trying to find out family history, and just a place in a format that's in a positive
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
And as I gain, putting everybody, giving the musicians the respect they deserve, putting them in a lot of cases on a pedestal, and recognizing them for their hard work and the talent that it takes to play an instrument, put a band together, entertain people, write music, produce music, release it, and every part of it, it's a legacy for them.
Yeah.
And the when I'm done with it, it already is going to be kept going. It's archived every year. University of Victoria every December archives the entire website,
Wow.
and then the our fourth member, Web Neville Gibson, who does the back end of the IT work. He also in charge of Live Victoria and Live Vancouver. He will have the keys to carry it on for as long as it needs be. And it's now set up where it's, the server is now in a cloud, so we don't have to worry about hardware breaking down or anything else like that.
Right.
And it'll just be there for everybody to go. A happier time, a happier place in people's lives,
Yeah.
and just something for all to enjoy.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Glenn. It was a real pleasure to get together and chat with you, and all the best to you. And I just congratulate you again on setting something so wonderful up for everyone, musicians, or even if you're not a musician. It's a website you should take a look at, and you'll be enthralled with what you see. So thanks for watching, everybody, and more exciting and interesting episodes are coming soon. So stay tuned.